10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. Good luck, studio.
Hello.
Oh, it's the Shy Life podcast.
All I wanted was a pie, and then I hatched out of an egg.
Okay, bring the mic over. He's ready to record. Hello.
It's the quiet ones you've got to watch, you know.
Is it metaphorical? Is it deep? Is it deep?
Boy, he said all that shy is right. Jeez.
Blimey, Governor. It's the Shy Life podcast.
Excellent.
609, 609, 609, 609, 609.
Bonjour et bienvenue au podcast for Shy Life.
Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Shy Life podcast with me, Paul the Shy Yeti. How are you doing? I'm all right. I've got Nick here again. Hello. Nick. Hello. Now this time on the show, this is kind of like a part two, I suppose. A while ago we talked about the films that we made during the 90s, and also the stuff that I recorded behind the scenes as part of Sutton Park, where I kind of used the filming as inspiration for episodes. So we kind of got to the end of the 90s, but we didn't go into the things we did in the noughties, which I think this is what we're going to do this time. So if we run the theme music when we come back, that's what we'll be talking about.
Darling, it's the Shy Life podcast.
Yes, but it's a positive thing, Paul. The High Life, the Shy Life.
You won't find a cast of characters like this everywhere.
Hello, Paul.
I'll go anywhere but potato.
Delicious.
Hello, campers. How are you?
You quite like a big bang, don't you, Paul?
Go Shy Yeti.
Oh, I hope he hasn't found out my secret. Do you think he has?
If you thought that was bad, just listen to this.
Yeah, I'm strangely drawn to Yeti Uncle John's ankles as well.
But has the Shy Life podcast slowed down? I don't think so.
It's all gooey and meaty and yum.
Has anyone seen my hot sausage?
Oh, I can't wait for it to begin.
It's the Shy Life podcast.
I like that. Yeah.
Marvellous, Paul. Hi there.
And we're back. So Nick, where did we get to with all this?
Well, I think we got to the end of the 90s. By the end of the 90s, my cupboard was bare. I wrote Hour Zero, which is my Millennium two-hander, in the January of '99, and I had 3 films to make that year. One directed by Andy Candish, but so I didn't really have much time to write, but I knew that I had to gather some stories up. I knew that I had to gather some stories up for the new, for the Noughties, because so I spent most of '99 gathering together some ideas. The funny thing was with the Noughties is I made less films, but the scripting development on them, or the development generally on them, was a lot more detail. There was a lot. They had a lot more stories going for them. It was there was a great deal more happening in terms of their development. So you've got a sort of it's difficult to say because. I'm very pleased with the 4 that I did, but it was extremely difficult to get them where they were because the development was all over the place, and that's why I only made 4, I think, and the last one was my last one. But yeah, I had, and also the ones that, unlike the 90s where everything was a little bit more straightforward. You wrote something, it was made. Then you wrote something else, and it was made. They all kind of had stop-start stuff. Certainly with, I started out with writing. I started out ideas-wise. Started out with Smile Again because I wanted to do a domestic comedy. I don't think I'd ever done that before, and that the original version of that bears no resemblance, well, hardly any resemblance to the finished product. That was that problem because I just couldn't get it right, and it was eventually made in 2002. And it started life in '99. Different Colour Graveyard. I wanted to do a twins story, and about. I've always been interested in doubles, and I kind of wanted to explore the expectations of siblings when you look up to them, and they're never quite. They're human like the rest of us, but. There's something I felt very much about my sister in the early 80s when I missed her, and I started to turn her into this hero that she never was, but I began to feel the influence of that. That was just going to be a thriller, and then Tide of Justice, which I think I wrote a lot of which when we were on holiday together in 2000, which was going to be the sequel to Tide of Freedom, which we had previously made twice. I decided, by the time I wrote it in 2000, I decided that we weren't going to make it. I didn't want to go through the rigmaroles of that. So it actually gave me a greater freedom to do what I wanted to do with it. So there was a lot more action and a lot more, things were bigger because I knew I wasn't going to make it. And then Virtual Gangster, which was a very vague idea I had about this guy who pretends he's a gangster and has actually spent time in prison as a gangster. That everything got written in slightly different order because we had at the beginning of 2000 we had a premiere of Ditch, which was the film Andrew Candish made that I wrote in '99. Everyone was happy with it, and they said, "Let's do it." We kind of all said, "Let's do it again this year." With me writing, Gareth and Sarah. Shady Brownbill appearing and Andy Candish directing, and I went back and I thought, well, what have I got to offer? I don't know quite. The only thing I had in a raw enough state to do was Virtual Gangster, so I sort of pushed that into bat first in writing, and Andrew Candish I think was expecting me to write another Ditch, and it didn't quite work. So that still to this day hasn't been made. Various people have said, "Yeah, I'll do it," and then haven't done it. And then Renata McKinnell, who I did Run Fast in the World with, rang me up and said, "Oh, why haven't you used me again? I'm available." I thought you'd gone on to bigger, better things. So I actually rejigged Different Colour Graveyard to turn it into a dual monologue. So she played both sisters, and I wrote that after that. Then we did Tide of Justice, and then Smile Again. I still wasn't ready, and when Different Colour Graveyard, which got cancelled a total of three times. That was eventually done last. It's terribly complicated, and so we were going to do Virtual Gangster first, and Andrew Candish got cold feet, so we didn't do that. Different Colour Graveyard we were going to do next in the beginning of 2001. That got cancelled because we didn't have a location. Then Renata got ill. Second time it was really right on the edge. They got cancelled the day before we were starting shooting. I was desperately disappointed, got stupidly drunk, and resolved to solve the problems of Smile Again, which was terribly complicated and had too many characters in it. And I just said, right, I'm going to use the time I would have filmed to get it right. So I stuck myself under a tree in the summer of 2001 and wrote it, and I kind of removed some of the characters. That explains why your character Trevor in it seems to be living with his sister, because originally you were going to be a divorcee, and that didn't work out. So, but yeah, the significant thing this is where you come in. The significant thing with the Noughties is you became my script editor. So with Andrew Candish, I think he was kind of drifting away, and kind of he didn't really want to be involved anymore. So I thought, well, you've got writing experience, so it'd be better if we had you on board. And you did all my Noughties scripts, I think, and you were very supportive.
I only really just got a very bad memory. I really remember doing the stuff, which was the one with the date where you needed to know stuff about dating agencies.
Oh, that's a Smile Again. Yes,
Smile Again. I remember doing things, and you sort of saying, because we forget now that the internet was, not in everybody's home necessarily at that point, and whereas I was that little bit ahead. And also a little bit ahead in using online dating and stuff. So I was able to. So I remember doing that.
Originally this character Michael, who was in Smile Again, was going to be a granddad who wanted to kind of bring a kind of positivity to the cynical world of his grandchildren. And he was going to start a political party called the Smile Again Party, and again, and he was going to end up in a cave, which is where the cave thing, which worked itself into a different graveyard. And I just thought, when I felt we had something, but when I actually spoke it out to somebody, I thought this isn't going to work, is it? And which is why there was so many fiddling and faffing, and it took 2 years. That was the problem with this first film of the Noughties, Smile Again. It took me so long to actually get the basic story right. I think I got it right in the end, but it was, and internet-wise, I was online, but I didn't have a computer, so I was relying on cafes. So you gave me a sort of bit of a guiding hand as to what would be feasible. And I remember thinking, what if you got computer dating? And the year before I went on a computer dating course without a computer, and it was a total one of the most expensive mistakes in my life. And I thought, well, if you could interfere with if you could hack into things, when you could sort of manipulate people, but not necessarily in a malicious way. So this is why, and it was so difficult to knit together, but in the end it came out all right. I suppose it's because with a domestic comedy, I didn't want to be too twee and too familiar, but at the same time I wanted recognisable characters that you could identify with.
So what year were we filming Smile Again?
Smile Again was 2002.
Yeah, so we've already gone past the era where I was filming behind the scenes, so I don't have any behind the scenes clips from my point of view.
No, I think yes, because with Sutton Park, you kind of the last of the bona fide Sutton Park actually wrapped up at the very end of 2000, beginning of 2001. But you did a diary. Sutton Park, which was in 2001, because you did some when we lived in St Martin's Church Street.
Yes, yeah.
And that's why for years I thought Sutton Park had still gone on to 2001, because I remember you recording with us then. Yeah. And I kind of
of course I was doing in that sort of period where you were working on Smile Again. I was working. I sort of ran. I think this is probably one of the reasons that sort of caused Sutton Park to dwindle, was that I was starting to do. Well, I was doing the Copernicus Files at the same time as I was doing Sutton Park, but the Copernicus Files meant writing scripts, which I was back into actually writing things on paper. But then it meant that a lot of the whereas you had actors from studio theatre and. Yeah. You had a mixture, didn't you, of people who were...
I encouraged a mixture. I liked having people from our own gang, and some from studio, and some from Alderbury Players, because I was, I'd been 5 years with Alderbury Players at that stage. But Copernicus actually bridged the gap between the 90s and the noughties, because you started work on it in 99. And in fact, you were actually getting into scripts as early, but you're back into script, should I say. About 98, because I think there's some Park episodes where you've got Cross to Bear in there, and also in 2000 although I think it was always meant to be a bigger production, but you had Touchwood, which was the monologues, and I actually directed. It's the only thing in my life I actually directed that wasn't of my own authorship. But we had a chat, and we decided that Richard Morley, who had had a small part in Run Fast in the World, and who actually I ended up sacking on One More Bow, was the right part for the Adam Elms character. And I spent the day in around Salisbury filming the monologue. I wanted to keep it as visually interesting as possible, and kind of had this character wistfully go through, as if you're walking through the city with him as he's pouring out his heart to you. And
Touchwood was a drama but done in monologues.
That's right.
So quite different from anything I'd done before. But I had done monologues. I wonder if it was possibly around that time that the second series of Talking Heads was being broadcast, and that might have got me back into the idea of doing.
I think actually,
monologues.
I'm not sure. I think, maybe so. Yeah, because I just can't remember when the second season of Talking Heads was.
Yeah, it was about 98, 97, 98, something like that.
But the thing is, I felt that from my point of view, I felt talking about monologues, I felt maybe it was unfinished business, really, because we were going to do the monologues in 95. And in the end, Rosie Lenz ended up being the only pure monologue. And I sort of did a semi kind of monologue thing with Old School Eye. And really, the monologue didn't materialise for one Inquisition or so. When I came to reimagine, because originally Different Colour Graveyard, for example, was going to be just a standard drama, and there was going to be a character that manipulated both sisters to his own end, somebody within the family. Whereas when Renata offered her services, I thought, wow, this is an opportunity not to be missed. So I turned it into a monologue. I suppose it was, although I called it a dual monologue, I think it was a monologue because you only got them one at a time. And I was really happy with that. I think it was one of the best scripts I ever did. And that, of course, there was once when in the August of 2001, when we were just about to shoot it, she said, I've got a cold, I'm looking after kids, I don't know when I can do this. And I was very bitterly disappointed, and I got stupidly drunk, and I actually got out my footage of Touchwood because that was the very latest thing I'd directed, and I kind of watched it and to feel a bit better about the loss of it. And that's when I thought, damn it, I'm going to write Smile Again, whatever it takes, I'm going to get it ready for production in the spring. And I did. And it was a good one to start with. And
because some of the other ones that you're doing, like Ditch and Different Colour Graveyard, they weren't movie length, whether they were
new, which actually brings me on to, because Different Colour Graveyard didn't get made until 2008. It was actually the last one I did. One of the first ones I wrote, and the last ones I did. It was sort of almost 10 years in development, because it almost got made in 2005. We had 2 days of filming because Andy took it over and insisted I change the title, insisted I removed one of the characters anecdotally, and he wasn't desperately sympathetic, but we had someone called, what was her name? I forget her name. She was a very, very, very good actress, but things like The Cave were gone, things that were achievable, but they're just so. I mean, and it got dropped like a ton of bricks. So for I was licking my wounds for a couple of years, and then I thought, I'm going to take it back. I'm going to put the title back. But more about that later. But you were saying about feature length. The second, I realised that we'd done Smile Again in 2002. For 2003, I realised were two significant things. One, I was getting married, and two, it was going to be 10 years since Prison in the Sun, 10 years since we'd been making the film. So I wanted to do something a bit special. Now, the previous feature-length one I'd done, Run Fast in the World, I had come in for a bit of flack about the length of it and the complexity of some of the ideas. But I knew in my heart of hearts I wanted to do another feature-length adventure, and with a bit of intrigue and things like that. And we'd been to a convention. Did you go to the Sunmakers convention with me?
I can't remember now, but
it was a
I tended to. But...
It was a bit of a pokey convention. We were all, the guests were kind of awkwardly stuck, and it was badly put together. But they put a fan video up, and it was a very fan-based kind of Daleks zapping things, and it was computer technology. I thought, well, really, I could do this. It's not super wonderful CGI. And I sent them an idea because they were looking for ideas, and they just sort of sent me a letter back, patting me on the head and saying, "This is our next event," which I wasn't very impressed with. But it got me thinking, for this film for 2003, what could I do? Could I get away with doing a science fiction story if it wasn't too alieny and no spaceshipy, and it relied on the ideas rather than the effects? And I thought, yeah, let's see where we go with this. And unlike Smile Again, it developed. I'm not dishing Smile Again. It came out very well, but it's the ideas I worked up a lot quicker with this. And Andy was originally going to play a smaller part, and he eventually, he was living with us at the time, so he eventually got promoted to a bigger part. But I thought I'd like to bring Carol Parkinson back, because she was the character in Prison in the Sun, and Elaine once said that she'd been prepared to come back. Now, Elaine and Keith our friends had sort of had gone off the idea of being in films. But I approached Elaine at the time and said, if I was to ask you to come back as Carol, what would you be prepared to do? And that gave me a perimeter to work with, perhaps get some ideas. So I had basically have the idea of her maybe being a kind of like a Doris Stokesy guru. She'd become a cult figure, officially disgraced because of her time in Sutton Park and the fact she'd gone a bit crazy. But somebody who was a cult figure, a bit like David Icke, who some people derided, some people actually went to for advice. Then I came up with the lead character, who became Oliver Darlington, and I thought, well, you've got to put the two together. They're just it's just screaming out for it. And I realised I wanted to go a little bit further with Carol than Elaine perhaps would have been comfortable with. So I cast Nikki Angel, who I've been in productions with. Carol was brought back in a modern setting, and I also, at the centre of that, is I'd always been interested, science fiction wise, fantasy wise, about doing a story about immortality, and the search for it and what kind of people go for it. But it's never, I don't remember it ever being done in a modern day context. And I thought that'd be interesting. And, but set it in a kind of like with the posh family, and giving it a sort of dramatic kind of frame. And it's probably my favourite of my Noughties films, The Gift from Eternity. And you were super as a nasty TV producer in it, and that was film number 2. It was first because I'd got a computer by then. You were saying about technology. I always say I blackmailed myself into getting a computer with Smile Again, because the storyline was about an old man learning about the internet. And so I thought, well, I've got to get a computer, haven't I? And I didn't know much about memory, and I was trying to experiment with digital editing. And I did that with Smile Again, and I knew nothing about memory, so the picture would separate from the sound, and I had terrible problems. And the editing, in fact, even though the filming went extremely well, and the writing, I got the script written within a month with Gift from Eternity. Again, you did a lovely job editing it. And I felt that because the videos just weren't up to the mark anymore at that point with editing. And it was 2008 before combined knowledges showed me how to edit and portable hard drives. So it wasn't until 2008 that for me is probably why I stopped making films. It's just the editing was just
I mean, I think that happened to me. I think that happened to me in well, we'll come back to Copernicus Files because of a particular filming session. Well, because I bought some new technology in 2000, and I was clearly over giving myself too much to do in 2000, which is probably why things started, like with Sutton Park, started drifting. Because I was doing Sutton Park, but I was also doing trying to bring back beaches. Because I before you and I went to Vegas, I went to New York with my brother for his 18th birthday, and I thought, oh wow, because obviously at that point I wasn't. I think I must have done some Sutton Park as well, but I was kind of thinking, well, this needs to be more than just Sutton Park. I need to do bring back beaches, which is what I've been doing at the early 90s, and so I did that, but also I was doing Copernicus, and then when I came to edit Copernicus with this new, because there was these videos that were supposed to be more sensitive.
That's right.
More sensitive.
And they just went between shots, didn't they? That was soul destroying. I bought a whole new video recorder to edit. I did a rough cut, but I knew that the heads were starting to go on my video, and I realised that it just wasn't going to cut it. I needed to do a DVD, and I needed to do a digital. I needed to get into the 21st century, basically. Just
with Copernicus, I know I cut together the first episode, and
that's right. Yes.
I mean, I was more limited than you as far as basically I was just recruiting my Sutton Park stars to learn lines, and it was the first time I'd sort of done a script, but so I was turning to you or to Harry or to Elaine or to Andrew and Lisa, but which is all good, but we're kind of used to doing ad lib, and maybe some of them weren't. They hadn't done learning lines for a long time. Not that I had any problems with anyone's performance. It's just that it wasn't the same easygoing. I think it's turning up and ad libbing sort of thing.
Yeah, I think the sort of. I mean, with Sutton Park, I mean, I was almost the other. I didn't consider myself very good at ad libbing, but it wasn't too demanding when you did meet up because it was, there wasn't any lines to learn as such. I found with Elaine and Keith, and then I think to a degree with Toby and Lisa, certainly in Toby and Lisa by the Noughties, the line learning wasn't terribly popular. As I say, they were up for it, but I knew I had an early meeting with them about possibility of them being in Smile Again, and it clears from the tone of it. I perceived they weren't terribly interested in the idea.
Going back to the editing thing, which was so frustrating, so I cut the first episode, a copy of it, because I did record. I don't know if there is anything missing. But we'll come to that in a sec. But I did record a majority of the first season, which I think was 6 or 7 scripts.
Yes.
And so I cut together that first episode. It looked fine on my TV, playing in my video recorder. Yeah. But then you put it on somebody else's video recorder, and it would pop, or it would shimmer, or between cuts, between shots and stuff. So you couldn't even guarantee that what you saw was what other people.
I think with by early 2003, the video I'd bought for just prior to or during Run Fast in the World in '96 was basically holding on by its fingertips. So I just, by the skin of my teeth, I just managed to edit and dub a video of Smile Again. I did try to do a digital, but it was hopeless, which was very, very disappointing. And of course, by the time Gift from Eternity came along, and again the picture, it's because I didn't have much memory. Somebody eventually pointed this out to me, and I think then in the a few years later, I was introduced by Eric Montague, who I'll speak about later. He worked on the eventual Different Colour Graveyard, showed and videoed my Panto Sunset Warden. He introduced me to this machine that taped off video to disc, which we can then rip onto a digital file on the computer. And I think Keith helped me with the ripping software and the portable hard drive, which for me, if I had been they would have been big and bulky, but if I had had a portable hard drive in 2002, when I was making Smile Again, it would have made a hell of a difference, and it would have caused me less angst. Because I mean, it really, with Gift from Eternity, I knew I had a cracking film. So it was absolute torture. Not, kind of, the video clearly was, the video editing just wasn't going to happen anymore. Like you, I did a version on the new video which had so many heads, it was like some sort of mythical creature. And it was sold to me by a very kind of surly chap who thought should be working on DVDs. I said, thank you. But yes, I watched on there, and I took it round to Andy's, and between every shot, and I thought, and as I say, it wasn't until 2008 when just after I made Different Colour Graveyard, I started editing properly Gift from Eternity, and it finally, I made it when I was 34, 35, and it finally debuted on my 40th birthday. And that's basically, I lost the momentum. I lost the rhythm of the whole films, and that's, I think, is why I stopped doing them. Because they, at that stage, obviously, Different Colour Graveyard eventually became See You Never, and then back to Different Colour Graveyard. So that was hanging in the wilderness for ages. I was very hopeful for years that Renata was going to do it, but it wasn't to be, because she helped edit the script as well as I think we had you and Renata on board for that. With, as I say, Gift from Eternity, I have very fond memories of, because it was a bit like being back in Prison in the Sun, because it was, I was planning on making it after I got married. I had the script in place and the cast in place before I got married. It was a bit like One More Bow, previously in 98. I got the script ready in 97. I got the cast ready at the beginning of 98. So when I took my A-levels, finished my A-levels, got bang in there with it. And it was the same here. I wrote it a gift at the end of 2002, sent the script, you edited it. I got the cast together. And of course, I had two people, Tom and Amy, who I worked with at Alderbury, who wanted to be in it. And I knew they were going to university. I was in a show with them at the time. And first day of rehearsals, I went in expecting to start Gift in September. And they said they were leaving in September. And I thought, so, I mean, it was like flying by the skin of your pants, just like old day, just like we did in Prison in the Sun. So literally, I phoned everybody up for the bank holiday, and I said, yeah, we're going to have to do this because Tom and Amy are going in September. So we rushed forward with their thing. But the thing is, because I had 10 years more experience, the end result was kind of much better. But Tom and Amy, I wanted to use again in my next film, the third one, which was Granny in Another Universe, but which was a sort. And unfortunately, they were the cause of it being delayed by 18 months, because when I got them in, I said, yes, he said, well, yes, we'll do it. And I brought them in, did this read through. And at the end of the read through, I said, right, when can you do this? And we went through dates and dates and dates, and they weren't able to do anything. They were completely unavailable. And I thought, why have you just wasted my time with this? And I had to recast, and getting the recasting people available was I wrote the script in January 2005, and we finally shot it in June 2006. It was a much later idea than all the others that decade. People have often said to me, why do you why don't you put your stuff in for a competition? I thought, I'm not a competition person. I'm not interested in making films that are better than anybody else. It's just the ones that were right for me. And technically, I wasn't an expert. I was in it for the writing and the social crack. And I thought, well, why didn't I write a film about this? Because all the films that in competitions, and this is certainly the case still, seem to be very formulaic. They're either very surreal or they're very they have to make a social point. I said I used to say it's like it's either the day in the life of Felt Tip Pen or losing Granny in the supermarket. And I thought with losing Granny in the supermarket, I thought, ooh, yeah, let's. So you've got this film about a film. You've got this person who's making it, who wants to win all these awards, and everybody in it is involved in it for a different reason. One of them wants to highlight the drug use. Another one that wants to highlight ecological things, and they're all in it for their own reason. They're all trying to crowbar their own agenda into it, and it went down well. And it was a good shoot, a very long shoot. It was one day, but it was kind of a very long day, and it was baking hot. And we had a lot of fun. My brother-in-law played a part of a grunting caretaker in it. My eventual sister-in-law was in it. And it was probably one of the most popular that year, that decade that I did. But it was so frustrating that I had to kind of recast the whole damn thing.
Which reminds me, doing the shorter plays was going back.
Well, films rather than plays,
going back to with me to the early noughties, and again, I think this might have been another thing I did and tried to do in 2000. I did a little little film called Hack, which was about a journalist and a sort of investigator, and it was like a two-hander, which I recorded in Brighton with Harry. So I think that was probably 2000 as well.
It was. In fact, it was. You were saying you had a busy 2000, as indeed did I. I was kind of more writing than filming, but I had to say, I think you did a lot of scripts at the time, because I was also 2000. Literally a few days before I got together with Ali, we did. There was one that I did for you called Skeptic. Which I played a curator, and you were a skeptic journalist. And I watched bits of it recently because it's been digitalized now, as indeed has Hack. Hack's been digitalized too.
Yeah, Hack's appeared on the show, or audio outtakes and stuff.
So I think we did a lot, and of course it was around 2000 that I did the Adam Elms one of Touchwood. I wish I'd done more now, because I just assumed that the other monologues would be given to other directors.
Which I'm sure would, if I hadn't have if I hadn't have had so many things, decided to do so much at once.
Adam Elms's one got finally edited. I edited together finally in 2016 when we had a DVD of with Ditch and Other Stories, which was basically all the Squiddlers. We had Last Pool, which you and I was a sketch that you and I filmed in Las Vegas as a sort of creative project to do it, as well as some park in Las Vegas. And we thought let's sort of gather up all the ones that are quite short or an example of things that were different, like Copernicus Files. There's some Copernicus Files clips on there. There's Series E, which we started with in the 90s. There's the Adam Elms thing, which is all nicely cut together. I'm really pleased with the way that came out. And things like, I think Last Pool was one of them. But
when did we? Was it the beginning of 2001 that you and I went on location for season 2 of Copernicus Files?
That's right. Yes. I came back as Nigel, and you and I did a story where we filmed the story called The Rivals,
which would have been the first season, the first one of season 2 had I on.
I think it might have been is it two-parter?
Or it might have been a special. A
special,
or whatever, yeah.
But we shot quite a bit of location work in Cambridge, and of course that were like I think all of Copernicus Files is now safely digitalized. So yeah, I mean that was fun. That was nice.
Did we do a fight sequence in? Was it Ely? Did we go to? Is that
Ely?
We went for a day trip to that wherever that town is, with that nice cathedral with curly sort of turrets. We did this fight scene on.
I think there was something like that. Yes, and I in my youth, I used to collect cheapo antiques, and I had these flintlock pistols, which are still knocking around. I don't have them anymore. I can't even remember what happened to them. But they were.
I can remember to me for some.
Probably, yeah. They were still knocking around then. They were quite useful. We used them in ditch as well, and we did indeed bring them along on to the recordings. And we had a duel. I think you were saying it at the time. It was based on an aspect of the old Graham Wrinkley joint story that we wrote along with Harry and Robin and Lee. Yeah. And about the kind of like a dueling club where the spirits of the previous rivals sort of it was a little bit like that idea, and which is very nice, really. It sort of appealed to my sense of melodrama.
That was sort of when I stopped doing filming. I spent, other than being in anything you wanted me to be in, I spent the rest of, up until 2009, I spent just really doing things in print. So I was doing lots of poetry books, 2 or 3 a year sometimes. I was doing Mass of Commons books. So, I was taking a lot of digital photos because I quickly, I started, I can't remember when digital photos, I had a digital camera, but it wasn't a very good one to start with. You couldn't actually see what you would take. You couldn't see what you had taken until you'd got it back on and plugged it into the computer. Yeah. But certainly around the time that I've discovered the Lulu website, the book publishing in the mid-noughties, and I realised that you could do your own covers if you took the photo. I definitely had a better camera by then, and a friend gave me a better camera, and then I started including photos. So I have quite a lot of photos, and on my blog and on my books, but not much other than what I was in for you.
I went digital. We started doing digital camera work in 2005. I think that we were still doing non-digital photographs after 2005, but I think we started seriously. I think all of my 37th birthday was all, I did a lot of photographs and that. I think that was all on digital. But I think with certainly technology-wise, I lost device. I had my camcorder, my VHS-C camcorder. I bought it in '98. During the filming of Gift from Eternity, I lost a vital lead, which hamstrung editing like nobody's business. That's probably one of the reasons I was dependent on the machine to get it, because without the lead, these days I'd look on eBay and get it like that. But I think eBay was around at the time, but I just wasn't particularly. It wasn't on my radar. But I then borrowed. I think I used Andrew Candish's camera, which he did for Ditch and virtually nothing else. And he tried to flog it to me, and he did in the end. I did buy it in the end for a fairly cheap figure, but I decided to do Granny in Video 8 because by that time I think Video 8 cameras were better. I certainly look at the one that Andy had in the 90s. I wasn't very impressed with it. I thought the stuff we did on VHS-C with Sutton Park and my ones was a lot better quality, and I think they've certainly looking at the park and my own stuff, they've actually stood up quite well over time. Some of the shots on Granny look a bit. One of the early shots with Gareth look a bit washed out, but apart from that, it was pretty good. Sounds better. And I was sorry, and also I think, what did I film? Was it? Yeah, I think I borrowed Andrew Candish's camera for Smile Again was shot on Video 8. By 2000, going back to Different Colour Graveyard, for years I hoped that Renata could come back. Then they did the version with Andy directed, which he was doing with Colin Burden, which sort of stopped for Christmas and then just was dropped like a ton of bricks. For years I kind of thought, well, are you going to do this or not? So nobody told me what was happening with it. I said, to Andy when he said, it's going to be a Sharda, and I thought, I said, well, I'm going to take it back, and I'm going to start.
For listeners who don't know what Sharda means, it's a reference to a Doctor Who story that was filmed in 1979 or 80. And which never got completed. Well, it has since been completed in various forms, but not at the time.
Yeah. So I thought I worked really hard on this script. I'm bloated if I'm going to have it. So I didn't like the change of title anyway. And I didn't like some of the decisions that had been made. So I said, well, I'm going to do it. I'm going to take it back and do it. Renata, I think by that point was probably older than the character was envisaged. If that's going back to Renata, one thing with the irony with Smile Again was one of the reasons it got booted up the arse and put into production and all the problems kind of solved because I was so bloody minded to do it was because Renata was unavailable for Different Colour Graveyard. Now, I was looking for the part of Maureen who was your sister in it, who and I found every person I could think of that age group. And eventually I found myself with Renata's name. And I phoned her and she accepted it. So she actually took part in the film that was replaced the film that she couldn't do. Which was ironic. She was actually superb in that. And I was so pleased that I put some scenes in with you two as well, because you had some dramatic scenes together in Run. So it was nice that you had some really good scenes with her in Smile Again. I knew that after Kerry Stockwell was playing it in See You Never. I didn't know Kerry very well. She was a superb actress, but I was told that she wasn't going to do it anymore. I thought it was a half job. Why just stop? Sorry.
Did we film both Smile Again and I've forgotten again. What's it called? The one that came after.
Different Colour Graveyard. Gift from Eternity.
Gift from Eternity. We once again we did scenes for both of those at my parents' house.
Oh, Mountfield is one of my favourite ever locations, and it's interesting because I got lucky really with. I mean, I was always lucky to have Mountfield because, and we used the gardens, both your back and the front garden. We used the garage because I couldn't find a cellar, so we actually filmed in quite cold conditions. And Nikki, playing Carol Parkinson, was having to come down from apparently in a trance in her pajamas, and she was filming in your garage in sort of October, November time. It was freezing in this, and in between takes, we would pile all these blankets on top of her, and I would say to her, when she was ready for recording, I said, "We're ready to record now," and you'd hear this from underneath all these blankets, squeals, and she was a lot of fun. And her husband Christian played the sort of lead baddie in it. And but yes, we did use Mount, and we used the when it was still just about a phone box. we used a phone box. Amy runs to it as the Della character in that, and so Mountfield and Charlton were extensively used, and with Smile Again we were the dining room
and the sun lounge they call it.
Yes, this dining room looks gorgeous in that. It was so nice to film in there, and it was the day before Easter, I think. It was Easter Saturday, and the Queen Mum died whilst we were filming. She didn't sort of collapse in the background.
She never did get to do her lines.
Yeah, I was recording one of the first scenes upstairs. Jo Rose, who was the daughter of Debbie Rose, who was in Tide of Freedom and was an extra in One More Bow, and went on to be an extra in one of Steven Spielberg's films. That's about the only thing I got in common with Steven Spielberg. We both used her as an extra. But I remember we were doing a scene with him and Renata, and your brother came out of a room saying that Queen Mum's died. And I think later on there was a scene in that day, later that day, where you and him were watching telly. And I wanted something suitable on the box, and of course every channel you clicked, Queen Mum's dead, Queen Mum's dead, Queen Mum's dead, and I had to put on the cartoons in the end. So we filmed extensively for that, just as we'd done in Run, and I just loved using your parents' house because it's so gorgeous. And indeed, the other huge bit of luck we had with Different Colour Graveyard was we filmed in a rectory in Shaftesbury called Bake's Farm. It was a lovely old farmhouse where Tamsin Jackson, who had previously played my wife in Barefoot in the Park, played the daughter in Different Colour Gravy, Gift from Eternity. And I said we were going to use Grosvenor House, which is a private house, which Andy used in To Cry the Woman, and they were very snooty and said, no, we got musical exams that time. It can't possibly be done. And Tamsin said, well, I can have a word with my parents because they've got this nice big house. And it was like Mountfield. It was a peachy one to film. And I just went round, did a recce and went round taking loads of Polaroids. And it was just juicy and gave me more than I was anticipating when I wrote the script. And we put loads of extra shots in, and everybody you get a lot of hanging around with filming, and it was one of those times when nobody minded hanging around because there was gorgeous garden sort of walk round, and her parents, her dad, who's a retired vicar, used to make films, and he was terribly supportive, and they supplied nice tea whilst we were filming there, so it was a beautiful place to film in.
Two other locations I remember, one from Smile Again and one from Gift, was with Smile Again. Didn't we go down to the docks in Southampton?
We did. In fact, there are two sea locations on as well. We went to the docks in Southampton, a very windy day, with dear Chris Dakin, who was married at the time to my ex-girlfriend Catherine, who was also in the film. That was the other thing. I'll keep Southampton. Yes, we did some Chris as the son and Joe Rooney, lovely Joe Rooney as the dad, came home from abroad. I mean, when I wrote Smile Again, it was a total coincidence, but was it Ronnie Biggs and his son came home from Rio. To having done the break, kind of came back because of ill health, and it's a fair cop gov, put the cuffs on, and his son was dead against the idea. So I did a kind of a rip on that, because the son wasn't very keen on coming back, and it was at odds with his decisions about coming back. We also later on we used Southsea. I wanted a funfair. Joe Rooney was an absolute star. He actually went round to councils, got angry on my behalf, and in the end, my brother-in-law actually found us Southsea Pier, Clarence Pier. That's right. And we did some. The problem was it was too light to match the other stuff that we shot, so I made people wait until it got dark the previous month. And I shouldn't have bothered. I'm so obsessed with night filming; it's got me into a lot of trouble. But over the years, because I've tried, I like a night shoot because it looks, if you get it right, it looks so good. But I've had success, equal balance of successes and failures with that. Yeah.
The other location I'm thinking of from Gift was Godolphin School.
Yes,
a girls' school in Salisbury.
And it brings it jumping ahead hugely. I had the great pleasure of working actually because it was the theatre, the Blackledge Theatre. Yes, that's right. Which was a film, which was a modern building as part of Godolphin. I took part in a very, very short competition film which was being run by my friend Richard Clark. Just before lockdown, I played a hip hop rapper despot in the future, and I got vaporized. They had to cut me being disappearing, which I was disappointed with, and we got, because Richard is an engineer, technician in Godolphin. We got to film in the Grand Hall of Godolphin, and it was absolutely peachy. And I'm so pleased I was able to be part of that. I hope to make more films with Richard, because I'm kind of stepped away from. I'll write and I'll act till the cows come home. But I think I'm finished with directing. I didn't enjoy it quite so much. I wasn't technically minded enough to do it. One
of the locations I'm thinking of is something that I was involved in towards the end of my filming, was again for Copernicus Files. And I think it was one of those, a bit like we did with, because we didn't know months in advance about going to Las Vegas. So that was sort of, and the same with this. Harry and I guess this was 2000 again. Harry and I decided to go to Paris, and as he was playing Nigel, I thought, all right, I must write a scene. And I can't remember if that was for the Rivals or one of the season 1 stories, but we had some scenes and we recorded them, and I think they survived. I think they got digitized, but I haven't really looked at everything. There's so much to look at.
There is quite a bit of Paris which is digital now.
But that was frustrating because I should dish the dirt. So we went to Paris, we did the scenes, and then Harry says to me, I've got a date whilst I'm here. And he guessed he wasn't expecting to come home from the date. So I'm in Paris, like, with him, but then suddenly I find I've got the whole of the day or from about lunchtime until the following day by myself. And I'm not the sort of person, I'm in a strange city. I think once I came home, I don't think I did anything. I didn't go out. I just got sandwiches and came home and went to bed. But I think he probably left me went off to have his date when we were at the Eiffel Tower. We either did a scene or I did some filming at Eiffel Tower. And then the tape was finished and I went to eject it and it wouldn't come out. And literally, I mean, I'm sure I could have sent it to a repair place, but I just thought they might not treat the tape with, they might just think,
exactly, it was too risky, really.
It's too risky. Yeah. So I took it home and I just basically unscrewed as much of the camera as I could so that I could get the tape out. So that the tape was more valuable to me than the camera, which was actually quite new. But I think that was another nail in the coffin as far as, new technology not fair.
It's things like little things like big things like that really kind of knock you back. The whole editing thing on Gift was really demoralising and really knocked me back because I thought I've got a bloody good film here. I just can't do anything with it. And it was only 2008 was the turning point because I suddenly, the means was there. Not only to do that one and, of course, Different Colour Graveyard, which I just made, but it was shortly after that, in 2009, that I teamed up with Keith Musselwhite and we re-edited the whole shebang, and it breathed a whole new life to those old recordings. And it's still... The potential, I feel a lot more optimistic now, even though I've kind of stopped making films. Whilst I think of it, going back to what you were saying about Godolphin, yes, that was interesting because I had put in these scenes set in a TV studio. Unlike a lot of things, I didn't have a clear idea of where we were going to shoot it. And during the read-through, Hugh Abel, who played the father in Gift, suggested I took up the gauntlet and wrote to the TV companies. And I didn't hold much hope with this. And so I wrote to them. I wrote to Southern, I think the Southampton, whatever they call themselves these days. And I said, can we just snaffle a corner just to simulate a TV studio? And they said, well, if it's a Saturday, it'd be out of the question because of sport. So that was a no. And I don't know whose idea it was to use Blackledge, but I think there's quite a few studio people in that, so I imagine that was another option. And I wrote to Blackledge, and although the caretaker was a bit stuffy, we did secure Blackledge, and I was delighted. I really was, because it looked like, because it was a very technical theatre. And it looked like a studio because you had all the seats in a sort of arena, and you could. I stuck you centrally in there, and we to make it a bit sort of Channel 4-y. I bought a inflatable sofa, and made it kind of like a bit tacky, and I think we augmented the claps in post production. But there was also I think I actually did it for a clip. It might be one of the clips that I did for this feature, but there's a scene where Andy, as the angry son, and Tamsin come and see you and threaten you, and you turn it on its head and threaten them, and that was filmed in the control room, and I thought it looked great. It was so many things little things you could do with that, and also I think with Gift, because I was engaged to be married just before we did Prison in the Sun, and my then fiancée wasn't very keen on me filming. I kind of wanted to show that even if I was married, I could still do creative projects. So Gift was just after I got married, and I think that was very much, I was making a bit of a stand. Just trying to think of other little things that were around. I got in. It's always disappointing. I've never been overly poor me about it, but I've always been disappointed about not being invited for other things. I mean, Andy didn't cast me in anything in the Noughties, even though he did films. And I think there was one where Kath Poole's brother was doing a filming course, and he asked for people to be involved in a sort of quasi trailer supposedly for a BBC One season. And he brought me into that. We filmed at a bus stop in Alderbury. I've got that, and there was a lady called Dee who I knew from studio, and we did a sort of like a 10-second trailer. We did impressions of people from the Fast Show, which I never actually seen. But I'd seen so many clips from that. I did I'm the only geek in the village, and I'd seen so many clips. I kind of was able to do it, but. I didn't know the Fast Show very well at all, but that was a nice little thing to do. But I would have loved to have done more. And what else?
Whilst you're thinking, I suppose I have a coda to my, because I didn't make films for years, but I did have a revival, and this takes us into the 10s. But it was a revival, but it ended quite similarly for similar reasons as I'll explain. So in 2009, I started doing performance poetry, having written poems for years. I was in a nice way, pushed into doing it, and it was recorded, just a 5-minute segment. But I put that on YouTube, and then I started doing little videos just of separate poems. And a couple of friends said, "I'll film you," because they used their cameras, and I just did. And I sort of started having a Vimeo account and a YouTube account. And then I think it was literally like New Year's Day 2010, I was down in Swanage staying over the New Year, and we went to Bournemouth, and we met Troby and Lisa, and I decided to buy, because by then my previous camera was a digital camera, but the video was very pixelated. But I bought this new camera because I no longer had a video camera, working video camera, but little basically cameras also by this point had the capacity to video perfectly well. So having bought a new camera and discovering how good the camera was compared to my old one, I started doing my Shaggy on location videos. And I think possibly of all the things that I've done that I have done video wise, I mean, obviously I love Sutton Park, but it's quite difficult to package in watch this.
Yes.
Whereas all of my Shaggy on location videos, you can just watch one, and that, it doesn't. It's more like poetry meets beaches broadcasting. It's often silly sketches. If I'm in a different country, then I'm showing the country, doing a few poems. I mean, in about 3 years, I did about 100 videos. Whether they be live ones or me on the radio or me on location. At the same time, I also decided to revive Sutton Park and did a mini series of that. That did sort of peter out again. I think because the Shaggy on location videos were going so well, perhaps it was harder to. And I think when I was just editing on Windows Movie Maker, and I think some of the Sutton Park things I was layering lots of special effects on, and maybe my laptop wasn't. I didn't have enough memory. I was having problems when I was trying to process the videos, and I think that also kind of was a frustration. I did have the same problem with the Shaggy on location videos too, but less often because there was less special effects to go on them.
Because Ali, that was about the time we were living in Devizes Road, and Ali and I appeared in some revival Sutton Park ones.
Yeah, I think you and Harry and Andrew and Lisa definitely all appeared in the. I mean, and the good thing is that's all on YouTube and has been since the day it was released 10 years ago. A lot of those, and of course they don't date because it's all digital. It looks just as good as it did 10 years ago.
That's a nice thought.
Yeah, and I'm happy. I watch them now, and I'm happy with what they look like. They still look as good to me as they did. It was the editing was very easy. I've been doing episodes of the podcast where I've taken some of the recordings and some of the bits and pieces and using them in audio form as well. So they've had an extra life, and so I have been watching them a lot recently because I've been thinking, well, I'd quite like to. Even though they are on YouTube, I quite like to preserve them in audio as well. So but partly it was my ill health in 2013. There were one or two videos. There's a video I recorded on the Isle of Skye. I think it's the Isle of Skye. I think that's why I went with Callum. And maybe even when I went to America in 2013, that there may be stuff that I never edited because I became unwell. But I also know that I got a new laptop, and Windows Movie Maker was not as very easy to use by that point on the new computer. So I think I used my old laptop for a while for editing, my new laptop, and then later on when I got another laptop, it was there was no Windows Movie Maker, and although I've tried lots of different supposedly easy to use editing packages, they're often so complicated that it's just I just want something like Windows Movie Maker, which is simple.
I know. I think obviously 2008 was the turning point for me because suddenly I was able to get back to do proper video editing and put music on and have that subtlety that I didn't have before. But it's. Yeah, I mean, I used Pinnacle for years. I've kind of with my, because I've obviously changed all my computer stuff last year. I haven't actually bought a video editing package because all the video editing I've done in the last year has been very simple stuff. But I really think, talking about it here, I think maybe I ought to. It's time I did get one because I'd like to. Maybe not all of the films complete because there's various people that wouldn't really want to appear with their exes. That's the two. Unfortunately, two things happened in the two of the same things happened in with Smile Again in Different Colour Graveyard in Gift from Eternity. Chris and Kath were in there. They were married at the time. They did some lovely, lovely scenes with me for me, and they split up just before the video came out. And similarly, although it was a little bit of a longer time, Christian and Nikki Angel Jarl also were in with Oliver and Carol in Gift from Eternity, and they too split up.
Naming no names, well, you can if you like. Naming no names, one of your actors became a rather serious political person, and when I tried to remind him that we'd been in a play together, he
well, if you called it a play, that's probably why it confused it. He said a film.
I'm sure I said film.
Yeah.
He sort of acted like I couldn't remember it. So.
That's a shame because when we were, I mean, I've not really reconnected with him since Amy came to the premiere. Because 2018, I got a digital video camera I bought from my brother-in-law. Finally, I went digital and 8. In 2008, I worked with Eric Montague, the filmmaker, who had a company called Vidibiz at the time. And he was putting together the DVD of Sunset Warden, and I asked for his help with Gift from Eternity, and it was he that kind of taught me about video files, taught me about I knew of video file, but taught me how to rip the software and get it going, and the portable hard drives, and when I think Andy sort of tweaked it here and there, and Keith helped, and finally Gift premiered on the 30th of October 2008, which was my birthday, and Amy came along, Christian came along, you came along, and Andy. Who else was there? So yeah, but a copy went to Tom. I know because I went round to his mum's house and gave her the copy, but I never heard anything back, and which is a shame because I worked with Tom and Amy. They were. I didn't realise they were actually. I thought they were an item until we did Gift. I realised they weren't. They were just very good friends. But with Tom, they were such fun to work with on stage, and also Gift. They brought an energy to it and a youth to it, which was great. But Tom, I just lost touch with Tom. I'd like to think he had a fondness because he enjoyed doing it. He loved the script. Amy was very appreciative when she saw it.
See, people move to London and they like to forget their old lives.
But he was very intelligent. But he wasn't serious at all. He was very light and very easy to work with. So I'm very sorry about that. Also in by 2007, I was ready to gear up for my. Hoping to God this is the final with a production that was going to take me into Different Colour Graveyard. Finally got it going, and I was going to team up with Vidibiz, and they said, we can provide you with the cameras. I thought, this is great. So he wanted his storyboard, and I thought, storyboard, and I didn't really want to do a storyboard, but I did one anyway. And the thing is, the technical side, the legal side of it was choking it. And that's the other kind of nail I freely identify in the coffin of the filming was when even a semi-professional, well, even like a semi-professional company comes along, it throttles it with red tape. I mean, I had Gareth and Sarah, of course, were trained actors, so there had to be something called what was called a model release form, and they kind of thought, what? And there was all sorts of insurance, and his partner at the time was a very dour kind of practical, instantly kind of demoralizing figure that go, I don't want to see a copy of what else you've done, as if I was kind of defending myself or something, and I had bad vibes about this, but I thought if we can get it professionally produced, that's going to be done. And the other thing was, sorry, Dave.
Well, I was going to say when I did Sutton Park, because my friend Robin went to Oxford University, and because they lived on college, or he lived on college, we were able to record all around the gardens where you're not where an outside person wouldn't be allowed to film. We got to film up the college tower, which he was able to sign the key out from. We got to film in the library, in one of the big posh libraries, down in the stacks with the rolling stacks.
Yeah.
And we did a cliffhanger where I think one of us looks like it's going to get crushed between the stacks, and they get. We just did that because it was Sutton Park, and we weren't making a big fuss about it. And when I went to Lanzarote or various other places with my parents, I remember it being a complete sort of excitement. In my head, I'm doing Doctor Who in 1983, going to Lanzarote, and I'm doing Sutton Park in Lanzarote, and I'm doing my obviously with none of the red tape involved. And it still exists to this day, so I got away with it.
But no, isn't it nice when you can do that? I mean, some of the things, that's the biggest legacy, apart from seeing my work brought to life by some great people. One of the great legacies of the films was the sheer. I mean, I learned sheer brass neck nerve from you on Sutton Park, and also from Dave Aldrich on The Retaliators. But filming outside New Scotland Yard, having a chase in Waterloo Station, you'd be at least shot these days doing that, and some of the things and crazy things like, again, going back to Gift, this retired vicar, Tamsin's dad, was very happy, unconditionally happy for us to film wherever we liked. And at the same time, he was doing these. He had every right to tell us to go away, because he was doing these quiet days with the church, the people in the church, and I had to go through this kind of patio of quiet people to get from point A to point B, and we smiled sweetly. And there was a chase scene and a scene where you could angle, because the Fakes farm was on an angle at the against the hill. You could actually get somebody on the roof without causing them any harm whatsoever, and you could do a scene with somebody running across the gable of the roof, which I did. I shot the whole thing in mime, so that we couldn't disturb the people there. And I just thought, how cool is that? So I mean, we're different kind of graveyard, Vidibiz. I kind of felt that I was getting in a bit deep, and I think time went on, and we did a recce. We were going to film at Weymouth, which I'd located as the thing, and it was all very kind of, yes, sure, we all win awards for this. And I thought, well, let's make it first, and it all felt a bit pie in the sky, and I took a week off just prior to the recording, and legislation still wasn't happening. This legal side still wasn't happening, and I think the last straw was Eric emailed me and said, "Why don't you contact a broker?" And I thought, "What the hell do I do with a broker?" I don't even know what they do. So in the end, I wasn't sleeping. I was being snappy with Ali, and I thought, bugger this. I'm going to. I want to do. I'm so determined to do this, but it's got to be my way. So I said to Eric, "Look, I can't do this way. It's just unworkable." And so I rang up Gareth and Sarah, much to their relief. I said, we're not going with Vidibiz. The four of us are going to get into a car, and we're all going. And next bank holiday weekend, if you're free, we'll all go down to Cornwall, because I spotted Hale Beach. I visited on my visit to Linda King in 2006, and I fell in love with Hale Beach. It was so big, and there were caves, and it was huge and wild, and anything goes. And I thought, let's go there and film it exactly how I wanted to. Because they were video bids were also saying, oh, we can throw, you could with the scene where she throws the bottle into the sea, you could do it CGI. I thought, why? As long as you don't break the bottle, just put the bottle in the bloody sea. Do it.
Didn't you also do some? Where did filming in Stourbridge go? Not Stourbridge, the gardens.
Yes. Now that was going to be Different Colour Graveyard, but back rewinding 7 years to the beginning of 2001, which was originally when we were going to shoot it. Stourbridge, I was very keen to use because a game. I think when you and I went there with the church parish outing with Chris and Kim and Ali, and we. I was very looking at the caves with great interest, and I thought, we were looking into the possibility of using those, but it didn't really work out how I wanted, because they were a bit funny about it, and it became prohibitive, which is why the first one. So
was that just photos you took and
It was a recce, but I seriously wanted to shoot there, and it wasn't possible. And then it took a long time for us to find another suitable location. Portland Bill was going to be the one we were going to use for the next time, which was August 2001. And then, of course, that fell literally into the sea.
Going back to Cornwall, we're almost running out of time. Partly to do another episode. Sorry. Sorry for the distraction. Back to
Cornwall. Cornwall. So we did pile into and it was again a wonderful nod to what Gareth calls guerrilla filming, which just went there, did our own thing. I cast Sarah because we were close friends and I needed someone I could trust, and a very good actress, not to say a trained actress. And she was very, very supportive of the script. And I got to know particularly well that weekend. We did this stuff there. We really went for it. I kind of pushed her a bit because there was a scene where she has to fall off a cliff, and although it wasn't a cliff, I kind of pushed her with a fear of heights, and we got Gareth to help her, and the end result was very good because of that edginess. And the cave, I would have liked to have done a more elaborate thing on the cave, but it did its job. And looking at it recently, we shot some scenes in St Ives where she's going to meet her sister. And I'm really, really happy with that stuff. It's really moody and broody. And the second sister we did in this September, which was all in Crawley, where we have shot Granny and Ditch. And a lot of it indoors, a lot of intense stuff. I worked probably closer than I've worked with anybody else on the films in getting some really, really intense stuff. And that was, we wrapped up in the September. I didn't have another film to go to, but that was the last film I did, and I think I've always said I stopped because of the circumstances and the fact that I haven't had a really good idea to go back to, and technically, I'm not an expert on these things. So, but I've recently got in touch with Rich Clark, who did some of the early of the films and has his own production company, and I said, let's act. And I've given him some scripts, one of which is Virtual Gangster, which of course is where we started, because that still hasn't been made. I liked my 4 Noughties films. I thought they came out really well. And because I suppose I had a more colourful sort of journey to them and through them, and they seemed, in a funny way, a bit more worthwhile. But I would love to do films again. I sort of appeared in Zenith Arc, our version of Zenith Arc, at the beginning of the year, and of course COVID's put the kibosh on it all. But bring it on. 2021, the bugs have gone. I would dearly love to do some more filming. I really would.
I think these days I'm all audio, darling. But I did do my first Sutton Park audio play recently. In the same way as I used to do the show, all kind of just making it up as I went on. But I wasn't. The only negative thing is I was on location in Bath and recording it, but nobody Can tell.
So, I have to say also, as a sort of finish up, really, a salute, a naughty salute to yourself, because not only did you feel for the form yourself in the noughties with all different kind of things, from the one-off films to the poetry and Copernicus files, you also contributed very nicely to my own ones. You edited them all. I think you did them all, and you were in the first two with Smile Again and Gift from Eternity, both giving lovely performances. And you were my rock, really. And I you're always there as a reassurance when things got tough. And I was particularly interested to see the way you worked in Gift from Eternity, because I think the day we were filming it, you knew you were familiar with your lines, and then you sort of locked yourself away in my bedroom and kind of concentrated, particularly on Intense and on there. And you played it a cross between Danny Baker and J&T. I always remember that. But no, lovely, and you had some nice scenes with Dex.
From your native land to be here in Las Vegas. I mean, this is a glamorous town, and look at this beautiful reconstruction of Vienna. Does this not impress you?
Looks a bit like the Waterworks down in Manchester.
But
they've done that quite nice, actually. They've done it used to be on the dockland and stuff, and they've sort of turned it into cafes and things, but they just sort of copied that here. It's nothing to write home about, is it?
So you are very angry with this terrible company of yours. I mean,
well, obviously I wanted to go to Blackpool, didn't I? That's what they told me I was going to go to, not Las Vegas.
Not since my catastrophic marriage to your father have I been so humiliated.
I can explain, Mum.
So can I, Mum.
He's back, and you knew it, the pair of you.
I knew it too. The creeping around, the phone calls. You weren't going to tell Mum at all, were you?
Well, you didn't.
No, she just threatened him.
You're all in this together.
Can I have a last cigarette?
Or a chocolate milkshake.
Every time that man comes back to this country, he sinks to new depths. And this time is no exception. Whichever rock he's crawled from under, tell him to go back there.
Listen to me. He's our father, yours and mine and Eric's. All he wants to do is build bridges whilst he can.
And what's that supposed to mean?
It means he wants to get to know us all again properly. Even you.
He doesn't respect me. He never has.
So, put it together, and what have you got? Your very own site. Your own blank, virginal world. Do with it as you will. And what will you do with it?
It's a spy outfit. My new venture.
Sounds distinctly dangerous. To what end?
To the greatest purpose of all. Love.
Right. They let you out of that jail too late, didn't they? You're flipping bonkers.
Don't worry, Tom. He's always like this when he's got a plan. You know he'd lend in tears.
Who cares? He pays well.
Oh, pay. Yes, Eric, the savings.
Any fool can design a website.
In the shoebox.
We've already paid him in booze. That's our Let's Get Out of Here fund.
Chop, chop.
I won't forget this.
You will when you're drunk is all.
He's earned it.
I'll make you a mug, shall I?
Thank you, sir. And if there are any problems, you can get me on the Riverside Park bench. The nice one with the tribute on it, not the one by the poop bin.
At least stay to finish your drink.
No, I have to go. I've things to drink, people to leer at. You know how it is.
A word, Mr. Boss.
We've got some bad news about your star performer.
And you are? Don't play games with us. You know who we are.
I believe I may have seen you on TV. What did you want to tell me about Oliver?
He's a murderer.
He's a what?
Yesterday, Alpha was murdered, strangled, and we believe our dear brother is responsible.
Indeed. And what evidence do you have, or did he just forget your birthday?
Oliver has appeared on your show openly saying he's going to rob us. Well, the whole damn country knows he hated Daddy.
Yes, but...
And now he has it, the family heirloom.
So it does exist then?
We thought we should tell you before we go to the police.
Before you do, there's something I should show you. A little home video Carol Parkinson dropped into me late yesterday. Now, I have to say that if you should openly accuse my guest of murder, or so much as go to the press, I might have to show the police this. Good afternoon to you.
You were warned.
Ho, ho, ho. Now, Mr. Wellington, you are going to do exactly as I say. Lie down.
I hope you know what you're doing.
In less than 10 minutes, our oh-so-proud, warmongering, coke-swilling, football-encrusted 20th century will be no more. And with it, the life and times of Tony Wellington.
I'm not going to die.
Your 20th century is. What did it do for you, Mr. Wellington? In the last moments of your old life, confess your most brazen moments, my son.
You want to know my favourite memory?
Moses saw the promised land.
Why?
Because, Einstein, like all the best lovers have said, you'll thank me for it in the morning. Treasured memory with feeling, Mr. Wellington. Now!
I had a really good scout camp once.
Haven't you got any juicy stories about girls?
I had one once. I met her at the bank. We worked together. Well, I worked for her. She was my boss.
Great. Now, think me into this experience. We've 6 minutes.
Right, okay. A street after hours. A girl in a fur coat. That's Sandra, my boss, and we're walking in the moonlight to the bus stop.
And? Come on, I want rose-coloured ecstasy.
We argued a few days after that, and I finished with her. Well, she finished with me, and then a few days after she sacked me.
What a bitch. Is she really your highlight, apart from the scout camp?
Small mercies and all that.
I've got to go now! Bye!
I want to go with you!
Gotta go! Bye!
Goodbye, 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 goodbye.
It's been good, but yeah, definitely time to come home now.
This show is part of the Pride 48 network. Find more shows over at pride48.com.
Oh dear. What's going on now?
Oh, it's the Shy Life Podcast. Let's go.
I have a voice.
I have a voice.
You have a voice.
You have a voice. We have a voice.
We have a voice.
Unique voices in podcasting.
UnivazPods.net.
Well, we could talk all day, but we really must go. And, well, thank you very much for talking about our crazy filmmaking days in the noughties.
It's been really lovely, and the 90s ones were nice as well.
Yeah.
They were a lovely creative time, and I'm glad they're there for the recollection of at any given time, you know.
Yeah, well, thanks for talking about it, and I hope you enjoyed hearing some of these anecdotes from us old filmmakers.
Yeah.
All right, we'll be back again soon. And we'll have Nick back again soon. And we'll say goodbye for now. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Well, gotta tell you, I didn't expect that.
What the hell just happened on this show? I mean, seriously, reverse it, because I lost. What's going on? What happened?
Man, was that worth it or not? Oh my goodness, that was a darling little shoe. Whoa, I love that one. Great show, Paul. Yep, that was a good shoe.
Mr. Sandman, sing your song.
Oh, that bottle I just burnt. 600 times, 600 times, 600 times, 600 times,
609, 609, 609,
609, 609, 609,
600 times, 600 times, 600 times, 600 times, 600 times, 600 times.
This is just the weirdest thing I've ever heard.